They say life can change in a single breath, a blink, a turn of the wheel, a voice on the radio. That day, for Officer Reed Donovan, it changed with a call he didn't expect and a door that shouldn't have been open. The sun had started to dip behind the hills of Willow Run, casting long shadows across the quiet town. Officer Reed was heading home, his fingers curled around a warm paper cup filled with bitter coffee. He had just finished another uneventful shift patrolling the streets of a place that rarely surprised anyone. Willow Run wasn't the kind of town that made headlines. The sidewalks were clean, the porches swept, and the mailboxes painted fresh. Every spring, there was a bakery on Main Street that still used a wood-burning oven and an old movie theater that played black-and-white films every Friday night. Life moved gently there, soft, slow, predictable. But Reed, he was not so gentle. Inside, it had been 10 years since he lost his wife, Laura. 10 long, hollow years. The world had kept spinning, but he hadn't. He worked. He drove. He nodded politely to neighbors. But the music in his life had stopped, and no one seemed to notice. At home, the rooms stayed quiet. Dust gathered in corners. A photograph of Laura smiling from their trip to the coast still sat on the mantel. He never moved it. He never touched it. And he never let anyone into the house long enough to ask why. "Morning, Reed," called Mrs. Halber from her flower stand that afternoon, placing pink carnations into a wicker basket. "Afternoon, ma'am," Reed replied with a small nod. That was the extent of most of his conversations these days. Then came the voice on the radio. "Unit 4, we've got a report of child abandonment. 117 Maple Hollow Road. Unconfirmed. Number of minors. Caller reports no adults in the home. Please respond." Reed's hands tightened around the steering wheel. Something in his chest shifted. "I'm close," he said into the mic. "I'll take it." Maple Hollow sat on the edge of town, where homes got smaller and lawns grew wild, where people didn't always wave when you drove by. Reed had been there before. Mostly noise, complaints, a broken window, a drunk neighbor, but nothing like this. As he approached the old blue house, he noticed it immediately. The front door was open, not wide, just a crack, but enough to make the air feel wrong. He parked and stepped out slowly. Gravel crunched under his boots. The wind was colder here, meaner. "Willow Run Police," he called out gently, hand near his belt, but not on it. "Is anyone inside?" Silence. Then, a soft sound, like a hiccup or maybe a sob. Reed pushed the door open carefully, and the smell hit him first. Damp wood, spoiled food, something sharper, like old trash left too long in summer heat. The living room was bare. A broken chair, a mattress with no sheets, a cracked window stuffed with a plastic bag. Then, in the corner, he saw them. 6 children. All girls. Sitting close together like birds trying to stay warm. They didn't scream. They didn't move. They just stared. The oldest, maybe 12, stood up slowly, her chin lifted, her shoulders stiff. She was afraid, but brave. Brave enough to shield the others. Reed knelt down, lowering himself to their eye level. "My name is Officer Reed," he said softly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I want to help." The girl didn't blink. "Our parents left," she said. 3 days. "I go." Behind her, one of the younger girls whispered, "We were so hungry." Reed's throat tightened. He clicked his radio on. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4. I've got 6 minors here. House is unfit. I need immediate assistance and child services." "Copy that," came the voice. But Reed wasn't listening anymore. He was looking at them, at the fear in their eyes, at the dirt on their cheeks, at the way the smallest one clutched the edge of the oldest girl's shirt, like it was the only thing keeping her from floating away. This wasn't a call. It wasn't A case. It was something else, something deeper, and something inside Reed began to crack open, like a door that had stayed closed for far too long. At the child welfare office, things moved quickly. A kind but tired caseworker named Marla brought them sandwiches. The girls ate in silence, except the youngest, who hummed softly while chewing. They sat in a quiet room just across the hallway, eating sandwiches wrapped in paper napkins. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and cold bread. Marla was kind, gentle, and clearly worn thin. She moved like someone holding too many fragile things at once. Calm, but on the edge of spilling. The oldest girl, Claire, hadn't spoken much since they arrived. She kept close to the others, her shoulders stiff every time the door opened, like she expected someone to take one of them away. Officer Reed Donovan watched through the glass, his hands resting on his knees. Something heavy pressed on his chest. Not pain, not yet, but the shape of it. Claire noticed him watching, but she didn't look away. Her eyes were calm, sharp, like she was measuring him. Marla walked in holding a clipboard and a tablet. She let out a long sigh and sat across from him. "Thank you for staying with them. Officer Donovan," she said, brushing hair from her forehead. "We'll begin processing their placement right away. We'll do what we can to keep them together, but with 6 girls, it's going to be hard." Reed blinked. "What do you mean, hard?" "We try to place siblings in pairs," Marla explained, her voice calm, rehearsed. "But it's rare to find a foster family that can take more than 2. Especially with this age range, and other factors." She paused. Reed waited. Marla glanced toward the room of girls, then continued more carefully. "There are cultural complications. Willow Run isn't known for being very open. Some families simply aren't ready to raise black children." The words landed like a stone. "So you're going to split them up," Reed said, his voice flat. "We'll do our best," Marla said. "But these aren't ideal circumstances." He didn't realize he had stood. His fists were clenched. "What if I took them?" Marla's pen stopped moving. "I'm sorry?" "The girls. What if I became their foster parent, all of them?" Silence dropped over the room like a blanket. No buzzing, no scribbling. Just the sound of far-off voices and one officer who meant every word. Marla sat up straighter. "Officer Donovan, Reed, you're a single man. No parenting history, no partner, no support structure. And these children, they've seen things, experienced trauma. Do you understand what you're offering to take on?" Reed turned and looked through the window again. Claire was gently wiping peanut butter from the youngest girl's chin. The others leaned into her, following. Her lead, her stillness, her strength. They were tired. They were scared. But they were together. And that, Reed realized, was the most important thing of all. "I do," he said, voice low. "I know this town. I know how people will look at me. I know what they'll say. But I also know what happens to kids when the system breaks them. They get moved around, they lose trust, they start to believe nobody wants all of them, that they don't belong anywhere. I won't let that happen. I can't." Marla folded her arms, studying him. "You'll be watched. Everything you do. Every decision. Every misstep." "I'm not asking for easy," Reed said, eyes steady. "I'm asking for a chance." Then, the door opened. Claire stood there, small frame tight, chin up. Her eyes didn't waver. "Sir?" she asked, her voice soft but sharp. "Are they going to send us away?" Reed turned toward her, words rising into his throat. "Not if I can help it." A flicker crossed her face. Disbelief, maybe. Then something softer, something more dangerous. Joy. Marla set her clipboard down and gave a slow nod. "Then we've got a lot of work to do." And just like that, Reed Donovan made a choice that would stretch into every hour that followed. Every early morning, every messy meal, every bedtime, every doubt, every joy, every lesson, every single day. The first morning in Reed Donovan's house was nothing like the ones before it. Gone were the quiet footsteps and still shadows. Now, the hallway echoed with running feet, half-laughter, spilled cereal, and the occasional shriek of, "That's my shirt!" Reed stood in the hallway holding a bundle of mismatched clothes, overwhelmed and blinking like a man caught in someone else's dream. The house had once been silent enough to hear the clock tick from 2 rooms away. Now it pulsed, with sound. The guest room became Claire and Joy's. The old office turned into a double space for Tiana and Charlotte. The attic, barely insulated, belonged to Joy and Charlotte, who insisted it was the best because of the tiny window facing the backyard tree. Reed hadn't slept. He spent most of the night walking the halls, listening for cries or footsteps, wondering if he should go in or stay out. At 5:32 a.m., he gave up trying and began making pancakes. The box of mix had expired 6 months earlier, but he used it anyway. Downstairs, the girls watched him cautiously as he dropped burnt batter onto their plates and fumbled with syrup bottles. "We usually had grits," Tiana whispered gently. Reed froze. "Right," he said. "I'll learn." He placed a crooked pancake on Joy's plate. She looked at it, then looked at him. "It's okay, Mr. Donovan," she whispered. "We can teach you." He wanted to thank her, but something swelled in his chest, and the words got stuck behind it. Later that morning came the second battle: hair. Reed sat behind Joy, holding a brush in one hand and a YouTube tutorial in the other. The coils of her hair resisted him. She winced more than once. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "I'm really trying." Joy turned, reached back, and gently patted his wrist. "You don't have to be good at it yet. Just don't stop trying." And with that one line, the weight of it all, the pain, the fear, the pressure, didn't go away. But it found a place to rest. The grocery store was busier than usual that Saturday. Fluorescent lights flickered above as Reed Donovan pushed a full cart down the checkout lane. Inside, it was a colorful, cluttered mess. 6 toothbrushes, 6 cereal boxes, 6 pairs of socks, enough hair care products to confuse the average man, and a few extra things he didn't recognize but was told were non-negotiable. The girls buzzed around him, Charlotte and Tiana squabbling over gum flavors, Emma pointing at a magazine, Claire attempting to maintain order with a quiet "enough." Joy twirled near the candy rack, and Charlotte pretended to be bored. The cashier, a tired woman with a worn apron and a name tag that read Beth, scanned a few items before pausing. Her eyes flicked from the cart to the girls to Reed. Then, in a voice far louder than needed, she asked, "Are they all yours?" For a second, no one spoke. The question didn't come with hate, but it came with something else: disbelief, judgment, curiosity sharpened by assumption. Reed met her gaze and gave a simple, steady answer. "Yes, they are." Beth said nothing more, but the moment didn't vanish. Reed felt the sideways glances from others. A man by the frozen aisle raised an eyebrow. 2 older women whispered behind their coupons. A little boy pointed, and his mother gently pushed his hand down. Willow Run had never seen a family like his before, not one like this. At home, the noise returned, washing the silence out of the walls like a cleansing rain. Emma's artwork now covered the fridge. Bright, bold drawings of houses surrounded by smiling stick figures and trees reaching the sky. Charlotte reorganized the bookshelves alphabetically, then by genre, then by color. Charlotte claimed the hallway as her personal stage and insisted Reed sit at the edge every evening for her one-girl recitals. "No stepping on the stage, Daddy," she would shout. and though the word twisted something in his chest, he never corrected her. Every night was filled with questions. Do we get to stay? Do we still call you mister? Will the peppermint lady come back? I don't know all the answers, Reed told them gently. But I'm not going anywhere. That much I do know. Late one night, after the house had finally gone quiet, Reed stood in the hallway. Behind 6 doors, 6 dreams breathed in the dark. He reached out and touched a painting on the wall. An old watercolor by Laura of their front porch swing bathed in sunset. Charlotte, this is what you meant, he whispered, when you said we'd have a full house. For the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt alive. The first crack in their new life came softly. Emma came home from school, dropped her backpack at the door, and said, I don't want to go back tomorrow. Reed watched her walk past. He didn't press, but a chill settled in his stomach. 2 days later, he was called into Willow Run Elementary. The principal's office was just as he remembered. Wooden blinds, flowered wallpaper, a bowl of mints. That never seemed to empty. Mrs. Ames sat behind the desk, pearls at her throat, a practiced smile on her face. Emma sat on a chair nearby, arms crossed, her face hard with dried tears. There was an incident, Mrs. Ames began. A boy on the playground, Emma pushed him. Reed turned to his daughter. Is that true? She nodded once. He called. Me orphan hair, said my dad just took us in to look good for the papers. The silence was heavier than the words. And what happened to him? Reed asked. We spoke with him, Mrs. Ames said calmly. His parents are involved, but we need to discourage violent responses. She defended herself, Reed snapped. This isn't about discipline, it's about a girl being told she doesn't belong in the family that chose her. Mrs. Ames held up a hand. Let's try to stay calm. No, Reed said, standing. You don't get to ask. Calm from me. Not when a little girl is told that her identity is some kind of costume, that her place in this family is performance. Emma looked up at him, her walls flickering. For the first time since she arrived, she saw that someone was standing in front of her, not just beside her. That night, the house vibrated with emotion. Claire slammed a textbook on the table. We knew this would happen, she said. We knew they'd say we don't belong, Charlotte whispered from the couch. Are we even really your daughters? Reed sat down slowly. I know I don't look like your dad. I know not everyone will see us as real, but I do. I see you. I chose you. And I love you. Claire blinked fast. Sometimes love isn't enough. No, Reed agreed. It's not. That's why I'm going to fight. I'm going to mess up, and I'm going to try again. But I'll never stop fighting to prove you belong. The room fell into silence. Then Emma stood and taped a new drawing to the wall. 7 people, hand in hand, under a tree with roots longer than its branches. That Sunday, Reed stepped into a place he never thought he would. New Spirit Baptist Church. The sanctuary buzzed with life. Voices lifted in waves of gospel that shook the rafters. The choir wore robes that gleamed under golden lights. Reed stood in the back, unsure, stiff in his cleanest shirt. When the service ended, an older woman in a purple hat approached him. Her voice was steady, her eyes deep. You're Officer Donovan, she said. You look like you're here to learn. He nodded. I am. Then come sit with us next week. Bring those girls. They need roots, she smiled. Just as much as they need rules. That Sunday morning, the girls wore their very best. Their dresses were ironed, their shoes polished, and their hair braided into careful patterns by Claire and Emma the night before. Nervous hands clutched Reed Donovan's palms as they stood before the tall wooden doors of New Spirit Baptist Church, the place that had become both a question mark and a promise. As they stepped inside, the sanctuary grew quieter. Heads turned, eyes widened. The organ's soft notes filled the space, but for a moment, it felt like time paused. A white man walking into a traditionally black congregation with 6 daughters whose skin didn't match his, that was something Willow Run hadn't seen. The girls stayed close to Reed, their shoulders tight with uncertainty. He gave each of their hands a gentle squeeze. Then the choir began. Voices soared like birds rising into dawn. The rhythm of drums pulsed like a second heartbeat. And slowly, gently, the congregation's surprise turned to welcome. A nod from a man in the front pew. A smile from a woman in a wide purple hat. By the end of the first hymn, Charlotte was clapping along. By the benediction, Emma was swaying to the rhythm. They didn't leave as strangers. They left as guests. That evening, they all gathered on the front porch swing. The sky was gold, painted with streaks of orange and lavender as the sun dipped low. Emma leaned against Reed's shoulder, eyes on the horizon. "I'm glad you didn't give up," she whispered. Reed looked down at her and smiled, eyes stinging. "I never will," he said. At first, Reed thought it was just stress. He felt tired, sure, but that was normal for someone raising 6 girls. Drowsy mornings and long nights were part of the job. But the exhaustion grew heavier. Sleep didn't fix it. Coffee didn't touch it. Then came the cough. Dry, nagging, relentless. He brushed it off. Until one afternoon at the park, Tiana had a basketball game. Reed stood near the court fence, cheering, clapping after every rebound. Then, suddenly, the world tilted. His vision blurred, his knees buckled. He caught himself on the chain-link fence, breath wheezing out like a balloon punctured mid-flight. Charlotte was the first to see. Her soda dropped from her hand. "Dad!" she cried, panic rising. "Dad, are you okay?" He forced a smile and waved her off. "I'm fine, just a little dizzy." But inside, he knew. Something was wrong. 2 weeks later, a white room confirmed it. Dr. Morgan sat across from him with a folder in his lap, his eyes kind but solemn. "It's non-small cell lung cancer. Stage 3, he said gently. "We'll begin treatment right away. Chemo, radiation. We'll do everything we can." Reed sat motionless. The word cancer bounced around in his brain like a stone breaking glass. He didn't smoke. He ate his vegetables. He jogged. He had 6 girls who needed him. "Support," the doctor said. "You'll need support." Reed only nodded. He wasn't sure how to tell them. He didn't want to see Claire's fear. Emma's hands shaking. Emma going quiet again. But he couldn't hide it. Not from them. He told them on a Sunday evening. They were halfway through spaghetti and meatballs when he cleared his throat. His voice cracked. "Girls," he began, "I have something to tell you." Claire froze. She knew before he said more. "What is it?" she asked, setting her fork down. "I'm sick," he said simply. "It's cancer. I'll be okay. But it's going to be hard for a while." The room went still. Emma whispered, "Are you going to die?" Reed reached across the table and held her hand. "I'm going to fight. I've got great doctors, and I've got all of you." The months that followed were not easy. Chemo drained him. Some days, Reed couldn't walk more than a few steps. Other days, he couldn't keep food down. But he wasn't alone. Claire stepped up like a general, cooking meals and keeping the younger ones in line. Tiana drove him to his appointments between practices. Emma created color-coded charts for medications and appointments. Emma read poetry to him when he lay half-conscious on the couch. Tiana made playlists, soft gospel, soul, gentle jazz, songs that helped him sleep. Charlotte, sweet Charlotte, sat beside him every night, holding his hand like she was guarding his soul. They became his strength. One evening, after a particularly rough treatment, Reed opened his eyes to find them all in the living room. Blankets were piled on the floor, pizza boxes stacked on the table, homework spread around like confetti. Laughter filled the space, soft, honest, healing. "You girls," he croaked, "are doing more for me than I ever did for you." Claire looked up, a slice of pizza in her hand. "That's not true," she said. "It is," he whispered. "I didn't give you life." "No," she said, "but you gave us one, and that matters more." The tears came then, not from pain, from love. They didn't share his blood, but they didn't need to. They were his, fully, absolutely, irrevocably. Every morning braid he fumbled with. Every story he stayed up to hear. Every time he said, "I love you," and meant it. They had built something stronger than biology. They had built a family. Weeks passed, then months. Spring bloomed in Willow Run. The trees grew heavy with blossoms. The porch swing groaned beneath the weight of quiet moments. One late afternoon, Reed sat wrapped in a blanket, a glass of tea beside him. The sky was painted in warm hues of orange and purple. Charlotte climbed onto the swing and leaned gently against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "You're not allowed to leave," she said softly. Reed smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth twitching against tired muscles. "I'll try not to," he whispered. And in that small, infinite moment, Reed realized something that had been slowly growing in his heart. Family isn't something you're born into. It's something you choose. It's staying when it would be easier to run. It's holding on, even when your hands shake. It's loving through the hardest parts. And as the sun dipped behind the trees and his daughter's laughter drifted, from the house behind him, Reed Donovan knew without question. He had chosen them. And they had chosen him back. The smell of cinnamon and frying plantains drifted from the kitchen, where 6 grown women, no longer the little girls who once, clung to each other on a dusty couch, bustled between trays, platters, and laughter. Pots clanged. Someone turned up the radio. Someone else dropped a wooden spoon. But all of them moved with purpose. Today was a secret. Not from each other, but from the man whose life had become their home. It was Charlotte's idea. "Let's give him one more first," she whispered weeks ago, her eyes shining with mischief. Something he never got to have. The sun had barely risen over the sleepy rooftops of Meadow Run when Emma stepped out onto the porch, sketchbook pressed, to her chest like a shield. Reed Donovan sat quietly, wrapped in his faded old blanket, his sheriff's cap tilted low over his brow. "You ready for a little field trip, Dad?" she asked with a grin. He raised an eyebrow, squinting at her from under the brim. "Does this trip involve speeches or wearing one of those fancy suits you girls keep sneaking into my closet?" Emma laughed. "You'll see." They drove through town, Reed in the front car with Emma, the others trailing close behind. He didn't ask questions. His hands rested on his knees, fingers tapping an invisible rhythm. Outside, familiar streets passed. The bakery, the school, the stretch of road where once he answered a call that changed his world. People waved at him now, nodded, smiled. Willow Run had changed. Maybe not everyone, but enough. At the edge of town, a banner fluttered in the wind above the community center. Family, legacy, love. Inside, the space had been transformed. Lights strung from the ceiling glowed warmly over a gallery of photographs. Reed paused at the door. On the walls were snapshots of lifetimes. Charlotte beaming in front of her scholarship award. Charlotte mid-leap during her Broadway debut. Emma at a book signing, her quote painted boldly behind her, "My dad taught me love is louder than blood." Emma stood beside a giant painting she'd made of the porch swing, bathed in sunset. Tiana was frozen in a coaching stance, whistle around her neck, and Tiana stood among a team of young girls, grinning like a champion. Reed blinked, overwhelmed. At the center of the room was a small stage with a microphone. Claire, now a woman, in a sleek navy suit, stepped up. 15 years ago, she said, a man walked into a house expecting to make a report, and instead he made a choice. He didn't know us. He didn't share our history, but he gave us a future. Screen behind her flickered to life, revealing the logo of something new. 2 hands, one dark, one light, holding the roots of a tree. Today, Claire continued, her voice catching, we launched the Reed Foundation for Inclusive Families, a nonprofit for multiracial adoption support, foster parent training, and scholarships for kids aging out of the system. Because love isn't skin deep, and family is what you choose. Reed wiped his eyes. Emma spoke next. I tell stories with paint. Emma tells them with words. Tiana coaches. Charlotte fights for justice. Charlotte sings. Everything we've done, it's because of what he gave us, what he lived. Finally, Claire returned to the mic. Her voice shook. We weren't born from our father, but our futures were. Reed was guided to the stage. He walked slowly, tears slipping past his smile. Before him stood old neighbors, church friends, teachers, even retired Sergeant Walt, who nodded from the back row, pride in his eyes. Reed cleared his throat. I used to think I rescued 6 little girls, he said, but the truth is, they rescued me. They pulled me out of silence, out of loneliness. They taught me how to love, how to stay. He paused, swallowed. They showed me how much I didn't know, and how much I still had to give. If I helped them become who they are, then I've lived a life better than I ever imagined. The room stood. Applause swelled like thunder. The girls ran to him, now women, arms open wide, and wrapped him in a tearful, laughing, joyful embrace. And for a long, beautiful moment, nothing else existed but love. That night, the house hummed with the sounds of celebration. Laughter spilled from the kitchen. Music floated from the radio, and stories, rich with memories, wove through the halls like warm light. Reed Donovan stood once again on his old porch, a place that had once echoed with silence but now pulsed with life. Inside, 6 grown women, his daughters, each shaped by time and love, danced around the dining table as if the years had folded in on themselves. Claire stepped out beside him, carrying a steaming cup of hibiscus tea. You did it, Dad, she whispered as she handed it to him. Reed looked up at the stars, his voice calm but full. No, he said softly. We did. She smiled, her hand brushing his shoulder. And now we help the next ones find their way home. The news came on one of those quiet Sundays, the kind that smelled like fresh rain on warm soil and sounded like wind chimes in a lazy breeze. Charlotte, now 28, graceful and confident, asked him to join her on the porch swing. It creaked just the way it always had, as if nothing had changed. She took his hand in hers. Her eyes shimmered with something deeper than happiness. Dad, she said gently, I'm going to have a baby. It's a girl. Reed felt the breath catch in his chest. The world slowed around him. He looked at her. This woman who used to hide behind his leg at the grocery store, afraid to speak. Now she radiated strength. That's beautiful, Charlotte, he whispered. She leaned closer. Her voice trembled. We want to name her Helen. After Mom. After the woman who dreamed of a full house with you. Reed closed his eyes. For a moment, no words came. Only the lump rising in his throat, the heat behind his eyes. Then he pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her not just for the moment, but for all the years that led to it. She would have loved that, he murmured, so much. Months later, when baby Helen arrived, tiny and perfect, the entire family returned. Not as 6 sisters anymore, but 6 women, each with her own story, her own path, her own kind of love. Emma flew in straight from a book tour. Claire postponed her courtroom cases. Emma painted a mural in the nursery, a colorful swirl of trees and stars. Tiana brought a My Tianature sports jersey with Coach's favorite stitched in gold. Thread. Charlotte performed a lullaby she'd written just for the baby, soft, trembling, and so full of love it brought everyone to tears. And Reed, now older, slower, but never smaller, sat on the porch once again, wrapped in a thick, knit sweater. In his arms, baby Helen slept soundly, her breath light against his chest. Around him, his family filled every inch of the space, daughters laughing, partners leaning into one another, children running barefoot in the grass. Stories flowed like music. The porch was overflowing. The sky blushed amber as the sun dipped low, and Reed looked down at his granddaughter, heart overflowing. His voice, barely louder than the breeze, drifted out into the dusk. I used to think family was something you were born into, but now I know. It's something you choose, every day, with your whole heart. He smiled, a slow, deep smile that held lifetimes, and rocked baby Helen gently. And as the final light of the day kissed the roof of the old Donovan home, love settled quietly around them, wide and lasting, like the roots of something deeply, beautifully chosen. Family is not just about blood. It's about the people who choose to stay, to love, and to grow together, even when it's hard. True family is built with patience, courage, and the decision to love beyond barriers. Reed didn't just adopt 6 girls. He became the soil in which they bloomed, and in return, they became his purpose, his healing, and his legacy. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another powerful tale of love, resilience, and family. Let's keep sharing stories that remind us what truly matters.